We live in this incredible age of miracles, but so many of us feel this deep sense of unease, don't we?
Today, we're jumping into something really compelling, a kind of fundamental paradox in our modern world. We've got these sources focusing on a concept called outer justice and inner evolution, and honestly, it feels incredibly relevant right now.
It really does. The core contradiction is stark when you think about it.
Exactly. So let's unpack this. On one hand, you see this incredible, almost unbelievable external progress. I mean, AI is transforming industries. Space travel is becoming, well, almost commercial. We're connected globally in an instant.
Phenomenal technological leaps. Science, global networks. The external machine seems incredibly powerful.
But then you look at the internal picture, and it's messy. We've got rising inequality, persistent exploitation, conflicts flaring up, and this pervasive sense of mental restlessness. It feels like everyone's stressed, anxious.
And that's the central question these sources force us to confront, isn't it? Have we gotten so utterly wrapped up in building the external stuff, the faster internet, the bigger economies, that we've neglected the inner landscape, the inner evolution?
It's like we built this incredibly sophisticated starship, technologically perfect.
Right. But the crew inside is, struggling. They're fighting, they're disoriented, they haven't figured out how to live together peacefully on the journey.
I found the way the sources define human life really interesting from the get-go. It's not just about biology, about our physical bodies.
No, it's framed differently.
They call it an ideological flow, like a current moving from something basic or crude towards something more refined, more subtle.
A journey from just raw instinct, survival mode, towards genuine consciousness, compassion, understanding.
And that phrase, ideological flow, it immediately raises the stakes, doesn't it? It suggests real progress isn't just about more stuff or faster speeds.
Exactly. If we're just stuck in survival mode, we haven't really progressed in that deeper sense. The flow's blocked. Real progress means enabling that shift towards subtlety, toward consciousness.
But first, you have to clear the path, remove the blockages.
And the sources dive right into those blockages.
Yeah.
Section 1 really highlights this societal trap.
Yeah, this idea that for so many people, modern life is basically just a relentless cycle of trying to survive, making ends meet.
It's easy to talk about technological progress improving lives. And it has, for some, absolutely. But let's be real. For huge swaths of humanity, the daily reality is still a fight for the absolute basics.
Things we take for granted sometimes.
Food security.
Yeah.
Knowing where the next meal is coming from, having safe, decent shelter, access to basic health care, medicine, education for their kids. It's a constant struggle.
And that struggle, that material grind, it just consumes everything, all your energy, your mental space.
How can you possibly think about self-reflection or spiritual development or, the ethics of global systems when you're worried about feeding your family tonight?
You can't. Survival mode shuts down that higher bandwidth. The ideological flow gets jammed right at the start.
Which brings us to the source's core definition of what true human progress looks like. It's not just one thing. It needs two parts working together.
Okay, let's break those down. What are they?
First, there's what they call objective adjustment. Think of this as outer justice. It's about fixing the external world, the systems, the structures, ensuring a fair, just distribution of material resources.
So adjusting the imbalances, correcting the exploitation in society.
Precisely. That's the adjustment part. Then second, you need the subjective approach. This is inner evolution, the personal journey inwards, towards self-realization, towards that higher consciousness.
An inner journey, an approach towards something deeper.
Right. And the sources call it the tragedy of our time, that we're so completely consumed by the first part, the objective, the material struggle, the bread, that the second part, the subjective journey towards bliss, gets totally pushed aside.
We get stuck defining ourselves by what we have, our status, because the ground beneath us, that foundation of justice, feels shaky.
And you see the consequences of that shaky foundation, that lack of objective adjustment, playing out globally. It's not just abstract. Well, look at the current world situation. The conflicts we see aren't just, political squabbles. They often stem from this deep imbalance. Think about the devastating humanitarian crisis in Gaza, or the ongoing war in Ukraine resource struggles, territorial disputes rooted in historical injustices.
Or even within seemingly stable nations.
Absolutely. Think about the massive economic disparities within countries like India, or even the U.S. Wealth concentration is reaching levels we haven't seen in ages. That creates enormous internal tension.
So the external chaos, the wars, The inequality, it's like a mirror reflecting our failure to establish that basic objective justice.
That's exactly the argument, which leads directly into the ethical call in Section 2. Outer justice isn't just good policy. It's presented as a fundamental moral duty.
A responsibility.
Yes, a collective responsibility to protect life, all forms of life, and to actively stop repeating these cycles of exploitation where the powerful prey on the vulnerable. We have to ensure we don't inflict pain just because we can.
And this is where the sources use that really striking analogy, the one about betrayal. It's quite powerful.
It is. It's designed to make you feel the weight of this failure. They talk about the marginalized, maybe the small farmer whose livelihood is wiped out by climate change they didn't cause.
Or the worker trapped in an exploitative low-wage job.
Or even, they extend it, the voiceless animal in a factory farm system. They compare these figures to a goat.
A goat that trusts the hand feeding it right up until the very end.
Exactly. Trusting systems, trusting structures, trusting people who ultimately betray that trust for profit or efficiency or just indifference.
Wow. That really lands because it highlights the breach of a fundamental, almost sacred trust. These beings, these people, are dependent on systems that fail them, even consume them.
And it forces us to ask, if our systems prioritize efficiency or output over basic dignity and compassion, are we really progressing?
The sources argue pretty strongly. No, a society that lacks that operational compassion, that basic fairness, cannot genuinely call itself progressive, no matter how many gadgets it produces.
Which sets up Section 3 nicely. We've seen outer justice is morally necessary, but it's also presented as the essential first step, the bread before bliss idea.
Wait, you can't skip the bread.
You can't. It's the practical reality. If the ultimate aim is this inner evolution, this subjective fulfillment, you have to build the platform for it first. You need an environment of basic safety and security.
Spiritual growth doesn't happen easily when you're fighting for survival.
Exactly. You need to fulfill those fundamental material needs: food, shelter, health, basic security. That frees people from the constant grinding battle for existence.
You know, I think a lot of people see things like meditation or ethical reflection or seeking self-realization as, well, almost a luxury, something for later when you have time or money.
And the sources directly challenge that perception. They say, no, this subjective approach, this inner work, it's the ultimate purpose of human life. It's not optional frosting on the cake.
And this is the key point.
But it depends on the conditions. It needs fertile ground. It can only truly blossom on a large scale, become a societal norm, when there's peace, security, and, crucially, that objective justice in place.
You can't reasonably ask someone who's starving to prioritize enlightenment. Their focus has to be survival.
So the act of establishing outer justice, of fighting for fairness and against exploitation, it actually becomes a spiritual act in itself.
Because it creates the necessary conditions for the human spirit to flourish.
Precisely. It's preparing the soil. And this leads to a really practical, actionable principle the sources distill for us. For you, listening right now, it's not just about governments, it's personal.
What is it?
It's a commitment. I will not exploit anyone, and I will not allow anyone to exploit me.
That's quite direct, both protective and proactive.
It is. And that personal stance, that spirit of demanding fairness for yourself and extending it to others, that's the bedrock. It creates the freedom, the mental space for that deeper inner journey, both individually and collectively.
Without that commitment, exploitation just continues, maybe in subtle ways we don't even notice, draining our collective energy.
Think about it. Are we unknowingly part of systems that exploit people far away? Do our workplaces demand unsustainable levels of mental energy, exploiting our cognitive resources? If we accept that externally,
We can't expect inner peace.
right?
It connects.
So we need a different yardstick for progress. We get excited about launching satellites or quarterly GDP growth, but the sources propose a radical shift in metrics.
What's their measure?
Real progress isn't measured by rockets launched, but by hearts awakened, by the level of consciousness and compassion in society.
If people are still exploited, deprived, living under oppressive systems, then the soul of humanity, you could say, is still restless, still unfulfilled.
And that restlessness tells us we haven't achieved real progress yet. We haven't done the necessary objective adjustment to allow for this objective approach.
So bringing all these threads together, looking forward with that positive, progressive lens, the ultimate destination isn't just one or the other. It's not just material comfort, and it's not just isolated spiritual seeking.
No, the goal articulated is much more integrated. It's aiming for a conscious, compassionate, and balanced human order.
An order that deliberately values both parts equally.
Exactly. It values both bread and bliss. It understands that you need the material foundation, the bread, provided justly, and you need the space and encouragement for the spiritual aspiration.
The bliss. They aren't in conflict, they support each other.
Duty without devotion becomes mechanical, empty. Devotion without duty, without engaging with the world's need for justice, can become selfish escapism.
And it's this integration, this healthy blend of the outer and inner worlds that creates what the sources call the complete human being.
Yes, someone who understands and practices both duty, which is lived out as outer justice, taking action, changing systems, and devotion, the inner revolution, the personal journey of realization.
They see them as two sides of the same coin, necessary parts of a whole life, a whole society.
And this leads to the really optimistic, futuristic vision presented at the end. It's quite profound.
The final leap.
The final leap. Only when we achieve this integration, securing justice universally to empower everyone's inner growth, can humanity as a whole take that leap.
A leap towards what?
Towards transcending the limitations of the individual ego, merging consciousness with the supreme consciousness, achieving a state of lasting fulfillment. That's presented as the ultimate purpose, the true endpoint of our collective ideological flow.
So objective adjustment isn't just about fairness now, it's literally the launch pad for cosmic realization.
That's the implication. To build a just foundation, and the path to the stars, the inner stars opens up.
Okay, so if we boil it down, the core takeaway for you, our listener, is this. Working towards outer justice, towards fairness and ending exploitation, isn't opposed to spiritual growth. It's the absolute prerequisite. You need that objective adjustment, that fair distribution of resources and opportunities, to unlock our species' true, profound spiritual potential. One enables the other.
Which leaves us with a final, quite challenging thought for you to consider.
If we accept this premise that meeting basic needs and ending exploitation is the necessary pathway to humanity's ultimate purpose, spiritual realization, what single fundamental system or structure in our world today most needs challenging? What system most aggressively prioritizes, say, profit or efficiency over human dignity and well-being, thereby blocking that essential outer justice?
Something to really mull over. What needs to change first to build that foundation for everyone?